The summer sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the well-manicured lawns of our suburban enclave, a place where the whispers of leaves seemed louder than the whispers of neighbors, and the breeze carried the scent of honeysuckle and freshly cut grass. It was a picture of tranquility, at least to the untrained eye. My home, a modest colonial with ivy-clad bricks, sat at the heart of this serene neighborhood. It was an older house, full of creaks and stories, with a chimney that reached into the sky like a sentinel. It had always been there, part of the landscape, perhaps even a landmark to those who fancied nostalgia over conformity. But the arrival of Karen, with her clipboard and self-assigned authority, threatened to rewrite that history. Karen came like a storm in a teacup, armed with bylaws and the zeal of a self-righteous crusader. She was the kind of person who believed in the power of a strongly worded letter, believing fervently that the world could be set to rights with the proper application of rules and regulations. And the chimney, my chimney, became her crusade. It started small, with notes slipped under the door, typed, of course, on paper so white it hurt the eyes. Violation of community standards, they read in bold, impersonal print, the handwriting of someone who never considered the poetry of imperfection. The chimney was, apparently, an offense to modern sensibilities, its height overshadowing the uniform skyline that Karen envisioned for our community. I watched as the notes piled up, a testament to her determination. My response was silence, not out of fear, but with the kind of quiet defiance that comes from having weathered more significant storms. I understood that the chimney was not just brick and mortar, but a symbol of endurance, perhaps, or simply of a home that had seen generations pass through its doors. But Karen's persistence was relentless. She enlisted allies, neighbors who nodded along to her crusade, more out of habit than conviction, their eyes glazed over with the promise of short-term peace. I would see them sometimes conferring on the sidewalk like conspirators, casting furtive glances at my house as though it were a fortress of untold secrets. The irony was not lost on me. The chimney, so steadfast and resolute, had become a lightning rod, drawing ire and attention in equal measure. And yet, in its shadow, I found a quiet resolve. Not one born of confrontation, but of understanding. For every note slipped under the door, every sideways glance and whispered conversation, I responded in kind, not with words or actions, but with a petition, a declaration that would elevate the chimney beyond the reach of Karen's bylaws, transcending the mundane squabbles of suburban life. I would petition to make it a historical monument. The idea, born in the quiet moments of reflection, seemed almost poetic. To take something so ordinary and enshrine it in history, to make it untouchable. It was a declaration of independence, a quiet revolution in the face of petty tyranny. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and gold, I stood at the foot of the chimney, its silhouette stark against the twilight. It seemed to stand taller, more resolute, as if aware of the battle it had unwittingly found itself at the center of. The first act had concluded, but the play was far from over. The wind carried the distant sound of laughter, mingling with the rustle of leaves, a reminder that in the grand scheme of things, this too was just another story, one that would unfold in its own time, in its own way, with characters both bold and banal. A tale of quiet resistance, of history and home, and the power of standing firm, even in the face of an HOA Karen. The air was thick with the scent of lavender from the garden as I stepped back from my newly planted rose bushes. The HOA's letter was a recent memory, etched into my mind like an uninvited guest overstaying its welcome. They claimed my chimney was too tall, an eyesore against the suburban tapestry. With each passing day, it felt more like a challenge, a dare, an absurdity wrapped in regulation. The morning sun dipped between the homes, casting elongated shadows, and I knew the neighborhood watchful eyes would soon scan my yard, tallying infractions like a scorekeeper at a high-stakes game. Their judgment was a constant hum, like bees in a hive, aimless yet persistent. The board meeting was a week away. Time ticked forward, each second dangling anticipation like a pendulum. I had prepared my petition, every word meticulously chosen, a rallying cry for preservation. The chimney was not just brick and mortar. It was history, my history, and I was determined to enshrine it. I imagined the faces around that conference table, eyes narrowing, lips pursing. Their rules were scripture, unyielding, and often irrational. Rules about fence heights, mailbox colors, and the perennial favorite, lawn lengths, each absurdity piled atop the next, forming a tower of nonsensical edicts that teetered on the edge of reason. But this was different. This was personal. The chimney stood defiantly, a monument to my defiance. The irony wasn't lost on me. Their desire to tear it down only fueled my resolve. I filed the petition quietly, an act of rebellion whispered into the bureaucratic void. I knew it would ripple through the board. Gossip spread here as swiftly as the morning fog, curling into every conversation. The Smiths from 2 doors down, notorious for their precisely trimmed hedges, would surely frown at the thought. I could already hear them, their tongues sharpening like knives, ready to slice into my audacity. The week unfolded like a drama, each day a new scene in this suburban theater. The mail delivered more notices, each missive a reminder of my transgressions as though my life were a checklist of infractions. But in these letters, I found strength. They were badges of honor, proof of my stand against the encroaching tide of uniformity. The day of the meeting arrived, heavy with the promise of confrontation. I entered the room with my petition clutched like a shield. The board members sat in their usual places, a semicircle of authority. Their expressions ranged from indifferent to impatient, a gallery of disapproval. The silence was suffocating. I presented my case with the calm of a seasoned orator, every point delivered with precision. I spoke of history, of preservation, weaving my narrative with care. Each word was a thread in the tapestry of my defense. The response was as expected, measured skepticism, veiled disbelief, and then a voice pierced the tension, a single line delivered with both incredulity and contempt. A historical monument. You've got to be kidding. In that moment, a current of electricity passed through me. It was a high-stakes gamble, this petition, and their skepticism only served to embolden my resolve. I knew then that I was no longer simply defending a chimney. I was challenging an institution, the very fabric of their rules. The meeting adjourned with no resolution, the outcome suspended in bureaucratic limbo, but as I left, the air felt different, charged with possibility. I had set the wheels in motion, and the course of this suburban standoff was forever changed. Back home, the chimney stood tall against the sky, a sentinel watching over the neighborhood. It was a testament to endurance, a silent witness to my quiet rebellion, and as I looked up at it, I understood its true power. It was more than just a chimney now. It was a symbol. And symbols, I realized, have a way of outlasting the structures built to contain them. The dawn broke with a muted glow, casting long shadows across the neighborhood. It was the calm before the storm, a deceptive tranquility that only masked the rumblings beneath the surface. I could feel the shift in the air, a charged tension that vibrated just at the edge of perception. My chimney stood proudly against the sky, an indifferent sentinel amidst the brewing discord. Neighbors, once oblivious to its presence, began to take notice. Their eyes lingered as if drawn by some invisible thread. A few even stopped, squinting upwards, their expressions a mix of curiosity and disdain. It was odd how a structure, something so integral yet mundane, could become a symbol of quiet rebellion. The whispers started, a soft susurration that rippled through the community like a breeze rustling through autumn leaves. They gathered in small clusters at the edges of perfectly manicured lawns, their conversations punctuated by furtive glances. I could imagine their words, though I rarely heard them. "Historical monument?" they'd ask, skepticism coloring their voices. I found it amusing how quickly they turned my defiance into a spectacle. In the safety of my home, I watched them through the window, a voyeur to my own drama. There was a peculiar satisfaction in their confusion, a small victory in the battle against arbitrary rules. My thoughts drifted to the petition that lay on the kitchen counter heavy with signatures. Each name was a testament to shared defiance, a refusal to be cowed by the petty authority of the HOA. The irony was not lost on me. The very community that sought conformity now faced the consequences of its rigidity. My chimney, now a monument by their own standards, stood as a testament to the absurdity of it all. It was a monument not just to history, but to the stubbornness of human nature. As the day unfolded, I felt the weight of their scrutiny. It was a pressure that pressed against my skin, a tangible reminder of my choice. But with it came a quiet power, an affirmation of control in a world that often feels uncontrollable. The irony lay in the fact that the very structure they condemned now commanded their attention. The crescendo came unexpectedly, as these things often do. A knock at the door, sharp and insistent, pierced the afternoon lull. It was a sound that echoed through the silence, a portent of confrontation. I hesitated, hand hovering over the doorknob, aware that this moment was a turning point. When I opened the door, it was not the face of authority that greeted me, but that of a neighbor, one who'd always been a silent ally. Her eyes, wide with something between amusement and disbelief, met mine. "You've really done it now," she said, her tone a blend of awe and wry acknowledgement. A smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. That was all it took. A single line spoken with the weight of shared understanding. It was a reminder that in this microcosm of polite rebellion, I was not alone. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of burning orange and crimson, I felt a strange sense of peace. The tension remained, a living thing that pulsed beneath the surface, but it was manageable. My chimney, now more than just bricks and mortar, stood watch over the neighborhood. It was a beacon of resilience, a testament to the power of quiet defiance. In the end, I realized that it wasn't about the chimney at all. It was about choice, about standing firm when the world pushes back. It was about carving out a space where one could breathe, where authenticity could flourish amidst conformity. And so, as night descended and the shadows reclaimed their dominion, I stood by the window, watching as the stars blinked into existence. The world was vast, unpredictable, and beautifully ironic. And I, a mere player in its ongoing drama, found comfort in the knowledge that sometimes the small battles we choose to fight are the ones that truly matter. The morning sun filtered through my curtains, casting slanted beams across the room, illuminating the dust motes in their quiet dance. It was a day like any other, yet charged with the potential for change, a day that would see the end of Karen's reign. The petition had gained traction, its roots intertwining with the community's desire for autonomy and historical recognition. Little by little, people had signed, their names a silent rebellion against the pettiness that had thrived for too long. I prepared for the meeting with a calm resolve, my footsteps echoing confidence as I approached the community hall. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of possibility. Residents gathered in small clusters, their murmurs a soft hum of anticipation. The old bricks of the hall seemed to resonate with the history we were about to honor, its cracks and crevices whispering tales of resilience. Karen arrived, her expression a carefully constructed mask of superiority. Yet, there was something in her eyes, a flicker of uncertainty perhaps, aware finally that she was losing her grasp on the community she had sought to control. The meeting commenced with formalities, each word a prelude to the impending shift in power. As my petition was introduced, I felt the room shift, the atmosphere thickening with expectation. People listened, their gazes intent, their expressions a tapestry of emotions. I spoke of history and heritage, of the chimney as a symbol of our collective past. I spoke of the absurdity of rules that stifled rather than supported, of the need to preserve rather than demolish. My words were met with nods, the occasional hum of agreement, a quiet symphony of understanding. Karen's rebuttal was predictable, her voice laced with an edge that sought to cut through the newfound unity. She spoke of regulations, of conformity, her words sharp but hollow. Yet the room remained steadfast. The tide had turned, and she stood on its wrong side, her attempts at control unraveling like the frayed end of a rope. As the vote was cast, I watched the community's decision unfold, a series of small, deliberate actions that collectively dismantled Karen's hold. The results were a testament to change, etched in ink and action, a new chapter, written in the margins of what had once been oppressive rule. The chimney stood tall, its designation as a historical monument now official. It was more than stone and mortar. It was a beacon, a testament to resilience, a finger pointed skyward in defiance. Karen lingered at the edge of the gathering, her presence diminished, her influence a mere echo of what it once was. She turned to leave, her departure a silent concession. There were no dramatic exits, no fiery speeches, just a quiet withdrawal into irrelevance. As the meeting concluded, there was a sense of renewal. Conversations flowed, laughter broke free like a river unbound, and the air was lighter as if a great weight had lifted. The community was restored, its spirit rekindled. Walking home, I felt the calm after the storm, the world settling into a new order. The sun hung low, casting long shadows that danced with the promise of a brighter future. I looked back at the chimney, its silhouette bold against the twilight sky. It stood as a reminder of our victory, a monument to our resolve and to the power of standing together. In the end, it wasn't just a chimney. It was a story of a community that refused to be silenced, of neighbors who became allies, of a past honored and a future reclaimed. And in that, there was peace.